And now, broadcasting from Titletown, USA, here's Joe Simon.
So many times the news we hear about is applicable to Wall Street and big cities, big thought, publicly traded corporations. And this is the podcast where our heart belongs on Main Street, USA. You know, we've been in the big boardrooms of the publicly traded companies. We've met with the really smart people in the glass buildings. And we've also worked on the manufacturing floor with one or two business owners with 10 to 100 employees. And that's all taken place over the last 30 years. And that's why we like to say our heart really is on Main Street, USA, where you can walk down the hall and meet the business owner and talk about what's on their minds, talk to the sole practitioner, talk to that one partner or dual partner owner. Today's story is all about protecting the corporation, protecting the partnership in the event of a disability. And it's going to sound like this is a story to make sure that you have a long-term disability insurance policy in place to protect your income in the event that you, as the owner, the partner, the main rainmaker there, cannot perform, and you're going to be gone for quite some time, more than 6 months, more than a year, into 2 years, and then possibly never returning. So if you don't have that individual long-term disability policy, or if it's a really old one, it's time to dust off the policy and sit down with a qualified advisor to ask the questions and look at some of the newest things that have been added to these types of policies today. Things have changed over the last 10 and 15 years. And we find that sometimes these are policies that have a couple different policies rubber banded together, and they're put in the safe or an important place in the file cabinet, and they're forgotten. Now's not the time to forget them. Now's the time to review them and look at what would happen in the event of an unplanned long-term disability for yourself. But really, the main subject matter today is stepping into what happens if all of this occurs. So your policy that's in place for long-term disability is triggered because you have a disability, and it's turning into a long-term disability. It's getting into the 6th, the 7th month, into a year, and it looks like it's not going to end anytime soon. So the doctors from the insurance company, as well as your personal physician, are involved. They're talking, they're communicating, clearly spelled out. This is a qualified, legitimate claim, not a fraudulent claim. And I know you're not that type of person, but there are people fishing around for that type of thing to happen. Free money, a free vacation. And so that's why all of that takes place during that time. However, let's go to the next chapter. So now you have expenses that need to be taken care of while you're gone to run the business. Let's call that a business overhead expense list of things. Do you have a business overhead expense disability policy in place, a BOE, long-term disability policy that couples with your individual policy as that owner? That is something that we take an inventory of, all of the necessary job duties and expenses to successfully run your business. And it all has an attached ongoing cost or fee to that. So we take an inventory when that type of policy is applied for, a BOE policy. If you have one, make sure it's updated. If you don't have one, make sure you get a hold of that qualified person to break it down, see their inventory list that goes with that policy as you're underwritten for specifically that BOE coverage, not to be confused with business interruption coverage, which is typically on your casualty side of things. This is right in the middle. This is due to your disability and due to the costs to run your business while you're gone. Which brings us to the third subject matter today in this business overhead expense conversation, and that is the cost of your replacement. So you're being taken care of because you have a personal policy to replace your income while you're gone, heading into a year or two. You have a policy now in place called the Business Overhead Expense Policy to provide funding to manage legitimate functionality in your business. But what about the cost of hiring that person that's got to be there, that has to fill your shoes? This is typically a policy you might receive coverage for after you're gone into that disability receiving, a claims receiving period of time. But the tax on your business to afford that high quality, high talent person to fit your responsibilities and your job efforts is there. And typically the business overhead expense policy isn't really built to provide that sort of larger type of income for that specific type of talent. So the question today, as we wrap things up, is do you have a replacement policy in place, money in place that's going to kick in when you're disabled to afford to hire your replacement during a 2 to 3 year period of time? Something to think about. Always hoping that you have a prosperous day. And let's be in touch. Let's talk. Let's figure this out together to make sure that you're one of the leading survivors, one of the leading successors on Main Street, USA.
You've been listening to the Joe Simon Podcast. Big ideas with powerful stories and real-time solutions. Business succession planning, executive benefits, employee benefits, tax beneficial savings, and more. Remember, information discussed here today is dated and not specific to your situation. Always seek personal counsel from qualified advisors. For more about Joe Simon, go to DaVinciInsurance.com. Joe Simon is a licensed insurance agent in the state of Wisconsin. Licensed to advise on accident and health, life insurance, disability insurance, and annuities, as well as qualified long-term care insurance. Make sure to visit the DaVinciInsurance.com archives for more of our podcasts.
Now we're on